Hey everybody, welcome to Algebra, section 6.5, graphing inequalities with two variables. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to graph an inequality in slope-intercept form. That's y equals mx plus b. You should also be able to graph an inequality in standard form. Also, graph an inequality on a coordinate plane with horizontal and vertical lines. So let's hop right into some examples. Okay, first let's start off with some review. We've graphed inequalities before, but it's always been on a number line. So let's review that, because if you recall, there's three things you need to know in order to graph an inequality. First thing, you need to know where to start. So if we take a look at the inequality x is greater than -2, our starting place is -2. So I'll go ahead and mark that up. Next, I need to know, is it an open or a closed circle? Open circle means that it's not equal to. So it can be greater than or less than, but not or equal to. If it's or equal to, then it's a filled in circle. So because this says x is greater than, not x is greater than or equal to, it's going to be an open circle. And third, I need to know which way to shade. So because it says x is greater than, I'm going to shade all the numbers that are bigger than -2. So there's my graph. Know where to start, know whether it's an open or closed circle, and then know which way to shade. Let's do another review problem where we graph an equation. So here I've got y equals 3x minus 5. So this should be really easy. That minus 5 is my y-intercept, so I plot -5 on the y-axis. My slope is 3, so that means I go up 3 and over 1. So up 3 over 1, up 3 over 1. And then I can go ahead and make my line. So what we're doing today is we're going to take those two concepts and merge them, and we're going to be able to graph an inequality instead of an equation on a coordinate grid. So let's take a look at this first example. Y is greater than -2x plus 1. So we're still going to use the same three steps from inequalities. You got to know where to start, open or closed circle, and know which way to shade. So let's start with, how do you know where to start? We're going to do the same thing that we did with graphing a line. We'll go ahead and plot our points. So I start at +1. My slope is -2, so that means I go down 2 and forward 1. Down 2 and forward 1. Or instead of going down 2 and forward 1, I can go up 2 and backwards 1. Up 2 and backwards 1. Okay, so that's step 1. I know where my line goes. Step 2 was open or closed circle. Well, in this case, it's not going to be a circle, it's going to be a line. So I need to know, is it going to be a solid line or a dotted line? And here's how you know. If it's greater than or less than, that's going to be dotted. If it's less than or equal to, greater than or equal to, that's going to be solid. So because my inequality, y is greater than, it doesn't have the extra little line underneath, so it's not going to be a solid line. It's going to be a dotted line. So I'll go ahead and make a dotted line here. So that's step 2. Step 3, you got to know which way to shade. And this is real easy. It all comes down to, and this only works in y equals mx plus b, if it's greater than, you shade up. If it's less than, you shade down. When I say y is greater than, y is my up and down values. So when we were doing inequalities like this review problem, we were only moving left and right. But when we introduce y, we're moving up and down. So if it says y is greater than, you shade up from that line. If it says y is less than, you shade down from that line. So I'm going to shade up. And what that means is that every point in that shaded region will work in that inequality. Okay? So if you want to shade it like that, that's fine. If you want to get a colored marker or something, a colored pencil, and shade it in that way, that's fine too. Some people like to kind of scribble. However you want to shade it is fine. Okay? So let's go ahead and do another one. Y is less than or equal to x minus 4. So I'm going to start at -4. My slope is 1, so up 1 over 1. Or down 1 and backwards 1. And because my inequality has that little line there, that means it's a solid line. So step 2, solid line. Third step, I need to determine if I'm going to shade up or shade down. It says y is less than or equal to. So because it's less than, I'm going to shade down. And that's the problem. All done. Let's take a look at some other examples. Okay, what if it's not in y equals mx plus b? Well, you've got a couple options here. One option is that you can put it in y equals mx plus b. Okay, so if I have 2x plus 3y is greater than 12, I can subtract 2x. And then I can divide by 3. So that's -2/3 x. And then 12 divided by 3 is 4. So that's certainly one option, is to get it into y equals mx plus b. And if we want to do that, I just go up 4, and then go down 2 and forward 3. Down 2 and forward 3. Or up 2 and backwards 3. And since my little symbol does not have the extra line, this is going to be a dotted line. And then last thing, since it says y is greater than, I'm going to shade up from that line. So there's my answer. Now, I'm going to do it a different way. Let me erase all this stuff. And when I do this, I should get the exact same answer. Okay, since it's in standard form, we could do the cover-up method. Okay, so let's do it that way. So if I cover up the y, I get 2x is greater than 12, so I get x. And I'm not so concerned about the less than or greater than, I'm just looking for the point. So if I divide by 2, I get x equals 6. So I can plot the 6. Now if I cover up the x, then I get 3y equals 12. Divide by 3, I get y equals 4. And then I follow the same thing for step 2. Determine if it's a solid or dotted line. Because it doesn't have the little line underneath, it's still a dotted line. So far it looks like I'm getting the exact same answer, which is good. Step 3, I need to determine which side to shade on. Now this is where it gets a little bit different. Okay, it's not going to be, if it's greater than, you shade up. If it's less than, you shade down. That only works in y equals mx plus b. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a test point. I'm going to pick a random point on the graph, and I'm going to plug it into the equation. And if it works, I shade towards that point. If it doesn't work, I shade away from that point. Okay? Now, I said pick a random point. It's not so random. I'm going to pick 0, 0 because it's nice and easy. So if I take 2x plus 3y is greater than 12. Okay, when I do my test point, it's important that you use the inequality symbol. In step 1, where you're trying to figure out where your line goes, it doesn't matter. You can treat it like an equal sign. Okay, that's why I said x equals 6 and y equals 4. Because I'm just finding the points where to put my graph. So if I choose the point 0, 0, that means I plug in 0 for x and 0 for y. And let's see if I get a true statement. 2 times 0 is 0. 3 times 0 is 0. And 0 plus 0 is 0. So I get 0 is greater than 12, which is an untrue statement. So what that means is instead of shading towards 0, 0, I'm going to shade away from 0, 0. So I go on the other side of this line. And you know what? I get the exact same graph as I did when I put it into y equals mx plus b. So I know that this method works. And it's just a matter of which do you prefer to do, okay? From here on out, if I have a choice, I'm going to go ahead and do the intercept method, the cover-up method, okay? So let's try another one. 5x minus 3y is greater than or equal to negative 15. So if I cover up the y, I get x equals negative 3. So I'm going to plot that point. If I cover up the x, I get negative 3 equals negative 15, divide by negative 3, and I get y equals 5. Okay? So when you're trying to figure out where your intercepts are, that's the only time that the inequality sign doesn't matter. Okay? So moving on to step 2, I need to know, is it a solid or dotted line? Well, because it has the extra little line underneath, that means it's solid. So let me just figure out another point. Okay, let's go ahead. Make that solid line. Now I'm going to pick the test point 0, 0 for step 3. I'm going to plug in 0 to x and for y. So I get 5 times 0 minus 3 times 0 is greater than or equal to negative 15. 5 times 0 is 0, 3 times 0 is 0, and 0 minus 0 is still 0, so that whole mess just turns into 0. And I get 0 is greater than or equal to negative 15, which is a true statement. So I'm going to shade towards 0, 0. Okay, there's 0, 0, shade towards it. So I know everything on the same side as 0, 0 is going to be a possible solution. Okay, so everything in this shaded region, including the points on the line, will work in this inequality. Okay, so hopefully if it's in standard form, you can do this method and it's not a big deal. If you prefer to put it in y equals mx plus b, that works just as well. So what about situations where you don't have both variables? What if it's just one variable? Well, you should know from chapter 5 that if it's just x equals a number, that's a vertical line. If it's y equals a number, that's a horizontal line. So let's go ahead and see how to do this. So here I have x is greater than or equal to negative 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to negative 2, put a dot. And because it's x equals, I know it's a vertical line. Now, is this line going to be solid or dotted? Well, this extra line tells me it's going to be a solid line. Now I need to know which way to shade. If you recall when we talked about y equals mx plus b, I said if it's y is greater than, you shade up. If it's y is less than, you shade down. Well, in this case, I don't have a y. It's all x. So that means it's all about side to side. So I need to determine, do I shade on the left side or the right side? So it says x is greater than or equal to. So I'm going to shade all the numbers bigger than negative 2. So every point in this shaded region will work in that inequality. Let's do another one. Y is less than 3. So when it's y equals a number, that's going to be a horizontal line. So I'm going to go to 3, and I'm going to make a horizontal line, but I need to determine, is it a solid or dotted line? Because it does not have the extra little line underneath, it's going to be a dotted line. And since it says y, that we're back to up and down. So it's going to be very easy to determine, do I shade up or do I shade down? It says y is less than 3, so I'm going to shade down. Okay, now let me just emphasize a point. When we go back up to the y equals mx plus b, some people get the idea that, well, if the arrow is facing to the left, you shade to the left. If the arrow is facing to the right, you shade to the right. Not in y equals mx plus b, okay? Because when we say y is greater than or y is less than, we're not talking about left and right. We're talking about up and down. So get away from the idea, if the arrow points this way, that's the way I shade, not when we're dealing with two variables, okay? So hopefully you guys understand y equals mx plus b, standard form, and horizontal and vertical lines. If you guys have any questions, feel free to email me or ask me questions in class, and I will see you real soon. Have a good one.